Welcome back to Welsh Miniature Board Game, and today we're going to paint the Ooh Rah from Wargames Atlantic. So first of all, we're going to start with this Vallejo model colour brown sand. So we're going to mix it up and get some water. Just one little drop of water should do, just to thin down the paint a little bit, to make it come off the brush a little bit easier than just raw paint. So we're going to start off by painting the face on this miniature. Now I'm not too worried if I get any on the helmet, etc., because I can always paint it afterwards. So that's the one good point of starting with the skin, is that you can always come back and paint the higher objects afterwards. Now you'll find that with my painting mostly, I do paint, and if it's a bit messy I don't mind, I'll come back and I'll clean it up as I go, as long as I'm not hitting anything that I've already painted. One thing I do want to make sure is I go down deep enough under the chin, etc., and around the back of the head by here, because here I do not want this really bright coloured base coat or undercoat that I've used to show through, because that would be a problem. So I'd rather it be this skin colour than that. So then we move on to the arms, pushing it right up to the sleeves. Again, I'd rather cover the sleeves slightly in this colour than leave that very pale grey, because that would look really awful in the recesses, while having a bit of extra skin on that won't really matter, and we can come up and clean it later. Now he's got fingerless gloves, so I am going to paint in his fingers and his thumb, so we can see his little fingers sticking out of the ends of his gloves. As you can see, I've already done the other hand. Now just take your time and go around the miniature, and it will look something like this at this point. So now I get this Vallejo model colour black grey. So it's a very dark grey. That's all really you need to know if you haven't got the exact colours, as long as it's a very dark grey. And we're going to paint all of the uniform in this, so the sleeves, the trousers, etc. So being careful, we're just going to paint around the whole thing. Now, like I always say, this is how I paint these miniatures. It's not necessarily the proper way or the best way or how you should paint these miniatures. I'm just showing you the way that I do paint these miniatures. You enjoy it and paint it the way you want to, and hopefully you'll be happy with it and you'll enjoy the process of painting them, even if your results may not be as good as you want them to be. But if you've enjoyed the process, you've really won at this hobby. The final result is important, but really how you get there is much more important to me. So I'm going to get this sort of underside of his jacket, so it's really like this body armour, this vest-like, vest armour. So I'm going to try and go around the arms of that. Then I'm going to paint up the gloves. Now I'm thinking that the knuckles and the back part of his hand is going to be like the armor plating, that you have those gloves and then you've got this hardened plastic or whatever that covers the back of the hand. That's what I'm thinking with this. So I'm going to paint the hand this grey colour, and I'll paint over the back of the hand for now, but I am going to try and remember that I want to put this sort of plastic plating on the back of his hand, sort of like those tactical gloves that you see like operatives wearing, etc. So again, I'm being careful to cover this light undercoat. Really, if you're going to do it, I would say start off with a dark undercoat, and then you won't have to, make sure so much that you are covering everything. So I'm going to paint the gun the same colour, just while we're here, because, this bright colour is wrong. Whether it'll end up this colour, I'm not sure at this point, but I do want to give it a bit more of a grey sort of colour. Now I'm watering the paint down so it sinks into all those little holes in the weapon, because there's lots of nooks and crannies to have to cover. So then we're coming down to the trousers. Now I am going to paint up to the pouches or the belt or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to paint the underside of that slightly with this dark grey, because again I don't want this bright coloured undercoat to show. So a little over painting here doesn't really worry me too much. So I'm going to paint the trousers. You can avoid straps if you want. He's got these straps that are holding his holster in place, etc., and his knee pads on. You can avoid them, or you can paint over them at this point. It doesn't really matter, because we'll be coming back in towards the end of this miniature to paint those straps in black anyway. So, you know, you can paint over them. It wouldn't really matter. We just want a nice coat of this paint. So next we're going to go to Vallejo, a model colour black. And this is going to be for the body armour, the pouches, etc. And I'm making sure that the paint is watery enough to get down into all the nooks and crannies, but not too watery, because we don't want it going over all the rest of the nice grey uniform that we have painted up. Now, I went for a grey uniform for two reasons. I quite like this sort of urban warfare look to it, and really grey is a nice easy uniform to do, so you don't have to worry about doing any sort of tiger stripes or, you know, that digital camo pattern, etc., you know, or oak leaf or whatever you want. With sort of urban warfare, it doesn't matter if it's just grey uniform, because that blends into grey buildings, believe it or not. And so yeah, I think it works kind of well. So I'm going to finish picking up all of the pouches, and yeah, and then I'll be moving on to painting the back sort of his, not his helmet, because his helmet is a different colour, but there's like a neck guard part, which thing. Oh, actually, I do paint the helmet, sorry, excuse me. I do paint the helmet black at this point, because, of course, it's a piece of armour, and therefore has to be a dark colour. So, pouches and armour, I'm painting this black for now, although it will not be the final colour. I'm also going down over the chin strap, etc., and under that strange little visory thing that he's got perched on the top of his helmet. So I'm using this black now to catch those knee pad straps that I was on about, to draw them in, etc. Again, it doesn't really matter if you do the straps at this point, because there will be another stage for the colouring of the trousers, so you could come in at the very end and draw in the straps if you want. But I'm painting them in now, so I know exactly where I am and what I'm doing. And also painting in the knee pads that he is wearing. Get a nice coat on that. Really to show myself where I'm going and what colours I'm using, etc. to do these things. Finishing off the strapping on the back of the knees. Get a nice coat, make sure everything's covered nicely, so if I see any spots showing through, I will go back and paint over them this black. So then, of course, I'm going to do the shoes, because he's got nice glossy black boots, I'm kind of thinking they are, so I'm going to paint them in with this jet black. Get them looking nice. So now we've got the Army Painter Flesh Wash, which is a godsend for me. I love using this stuff on flesh, etc. It gives it a lot of definition and character without actually doing much work. So we're going to bathe everything in this wash. Give some interest to the face, and it will sink into the folds, etc. Hide a multitude of sins that we've done with the painting. But yeah, no, chuck a load of wash on the face, on the arms, etc. just to blend it in. Now if it looks like it's pooling way too much, you can remove some, but personally at the moment I wouldn't worry too much about it. Just dump this stuff on, and you can come back later and clean it up by going over with the brown sand again, just to pick up the skin. Excuse me for going off camera. I've got it zoomed in like 5 or 10 times, so it's really up close, and I keep forgetting and I'm slipping off camera. So yeah, still not something I'm used to painting on camera. But yeah, cover all the skin with the wash, and you'll have a nice, interesting skin tone. Remembering his little fingers sticking out of his fingerless gloves. So it'll look a bit like this at this point. Don't worry if it looks blotchy, we can clean it up as we go on. So now we're going for the Vallejo model colour Basalt Green. Green? Grey, not green. It's Basalt Grey. And with this colour, we are going to hit all the sort of... We're not going to hit the sunken or shaded areas of his uniform. So this is on the grey that we've used before. But we're going to hit everything but the shadowed areas. So like here on his crotch, we'll hit that obviously. And then we're going to hit the raised parts of the uniform. I'll show you now in a minute what it will look like once we've got that first part of raised uniform painted up. So it looks like he's wearing Y fronts at the moment, but we'll soon change that once we've actually continue on with the paint job. But we just pick out anything that we want to raise, anything that's raised and anything that we want to highlight. We're going to put in this colour. I think 2 shades of grey is going to be fine for this guy. He's a military kind of dude, so we don't want too much subtlety. You know, camouflage isn't very subtle, it's quite... overpowering if you just look at it, but this will give the impression of sort of a camo, just light grey, fatigues, etc. And the shadow will work fine. So I'm saying now we were covering here about 90% of the uniform area, you know, just leaving that very dark grey or black grey in the recesses just to give us some shadow. Now you could do the same sort of thing using a wash, I suppose, but I'm rather than doing it this way, where I'll just leave the black in the shadow or the dark grey in the shadow instead of using a wash, and it looks cleaner. I alternate between the two styles, you know, whether I use a wash to do it or whether I just use a darker colour then a lighter colour and stick with that. But with this guy, I've decided that I'm just going to do this. So we're going to leave a slight black line, sort of, or a dark grey line, between the folds, etc. Like he's got that little strap that can pin up the sleeve, etc. So we're going to leave a little black line either side, or a dark line either side of that strap, just to make it pop a little bit more. Again, hitting all the folds. And of course, we're going to have to hit the top of the shoulder because a lot of light would hit the top of the shoulder, and there should be, you know, a lighter colour, etc. there because that's where our light source is coming from. But we want to make sure that we hit all of the folds that stick up, and you know, try and keep out of the recesses. So yeah, as you'll see throughout the video, I keep turning the miniature, keep looking at it, keep trying to figure out where I want the colours, etc. So I'm going to hit now with the gloves, make sure I've got the gloves all done, and after I've done that, I'm going back with the Vallejo model colour Dark Sea Blue. So this has got a sort of a bluey green tone to it, but I'm going to hit the helmet and the armour with this colour. So going around the helmet, just picking it out. Now there's not a huge difference between this and the very dark grey, but there is tonally a lot of difference, and you might see it as it goes on in the video, but because the colours are quite similar, it's hard for you to see exactly the difference here, but believe me, there is a difference. So I'm going to leave the strap on the back of the helmet black because all of our sort of straps are black on this model. So I'm just making sure that we get plenty of this colour on the helmet. I'm leaving sort of the last little bit so that there is a line where it joins that strap, etc. And as you can see, it shows up a bit more here because it's dried out a bit more. So I'm going to paint the central panel of each part of the armour. So down the back, he's got this, like, I'm not quite sure what that shape is called, sort of a triangle, I suppose. I'm going to paint down the middle of it and then spread it out, but leaving a little bit of an edge so that you can see some shadow, etc. And it'll give a nice look finish to the end. So I'm making sure the paint is wet enough that it comes off my brush quite easily, and I'm also doing this like neck guard he's got on him. Yeah, I'm not sure if that is a part of the uniform or the armor. I think it's part of the armor, so yeah, I think I picked the right color to paint this part. So keep turning the miniature around, keep looking to see where you've missed anything. And make sure that you get a nice coat of paint. So then we're going to this sort of side part of the armour, and we're going to do sort of an L shape, a capital L, so like a line down and a line across to try and sort of get that sort of shape, but also leaving a little bit again in the recesses so it pops out a little bit more. You can kind of see it when the light shines on it, what I mean. Keep going back and checking. So these straps going over his shoulders. Now I painted them this armor color. I suppose really they could have been painted the black because they are sort of straps, but I'm painting the pouches and the straps same color as the armor. So yeah, I'm going over the shoulders, painting the straps, painting the pouches on his chest to make sure that they look right. But again, with the pouches going down his chest, I'm only hitting sort of about 60% of the pouches, you know, so sort of not all of it. I'm not pushing it down into the gaps, etc. I'm only hitting the raised areas, so we give some, you know, contrast and some interest in the colours, even though they're very similar. Again, with the front panels that he's got going down his chest, I'm hitting the central parts, trying to leave the edges so that the light is sort of dimmer around the edges, but makes the central plate pop much more, give it a bit more visual interest for you. So now I'm coming to the pouches around his waist, and again I'm hitting like 60-70% of the thing. Anything that's sort of raised I'll try and hit, but I'll make sure that I don't hit everything, because I do want some of the black showing through as well. Same with this front plate that he's got around his midriff. I'm going to do the same, hitting, you know, the majority of it, but not all of it. He's also got this plate on the back of his arm, so I'm going to paint that up, although again, I fall off camera. And the central part of his knee pad looks like there's some sort of metal plating on it, so I'm going to paint this colour, but I'm keeping the rest of the knee pad black, so it shows up as, you know, that there's a plate on top of the Kevlar knee pads. So if I think I can see any of the colours I don't want shown through, even if it's the wrong colour, I'll put a bit of this over it just to try and hide it. So yeah, make it nice and clean like this. I think he's looking pretty good at the moment. So we use Army Painter Gravelord Grey Speed Paint. Now I don't use a lot of speed paint, but I do use it sometimes, more as a thick wash than a speed paint, but yeah. So I'm going to paint it over the weapon because I think it gives it quite a nice look, and it sinks into all of those recessed weird little holes that this weapon has got, which, you know, some sort of ports or air vents or whatever. Then we go back to our Vallejo model colour dark grey sea, because I forgot, of course, I wanted those sort of hardened plastic pads on the back of his hands, so I'm going here and painting those in that colour to make it stand out from the black gloves or the dark grey gloves. And I'm quite pleased with how he's looking at the moment. So next we're going to grab the Vallejo model colour Basalt Grey, and I'm going to wipe off a lot of the paint, almost a dry brush I suppose, and then I'm just going to flip over the edges of the gun to make them pop out. Now it doesn't matter if I hit the hand a little bit because they're dark colours, it'll just give a bit more of a highlight on the hand, the gloves, etc. As long as I don't hit the skin, I'm quite alright with that. We're also going to do that weird little visor thing that he's got hanging on his helmet, strapped to his helmet, to make that pop out a little bit more from the base. So next we got the Army Painter Grave Lord Speed Paint again. And this is going to be painted all over the base to sort of give us a slightly darker tone to the base, because the base tone that I have is a bit bright. Then we have a Vallejo model colour Brown Sand again, so it's the skin colour that we started with. And with this, making sure I got a nice point, I'm going to come along and draw in sort of across the top of the nose, his cheekbones, etc., to bring out some highlights and some lowlights in his face. So this is why I said it didn't really matter if you put your wash on too thick or not. So I'm hitting the elbows, bringing back the wash a little bit, so we got a bit more of the skin colour showing and not so much of the shadows. Vallejo model colour Light Flesh, so this is a really light colour. And with this, we are going to try very carefully to draw in his eyes. Now it's up to you whether you do eyes. I often don't, but if I'm doing something for camera, etc., or real extreme close-ups, I do sometimes put a little white in their eyes. I don't bother with pupils though. Vallejo model colour Dark Vermilion, so this is for some finishing touches. I'm going to put a little blob on the end of, he's got like a camera on his shoulder and some sort of thing on his visor, so I'll put it on that as well, you know, just to show that he's got some sort of mechanical or electric lighting or, you know, recording device upon him. You could go for a light whitish blue if you wanted to, but no, this is what I've used. So then we've got black, so any sort of black that you want to use. Now this is the colour that I always use for doing the rim of my miniatures. Now it's up to you whether you use black or a different colour. Some people like to use sort of unit colours to keep them all together, but I'm using black here. So that's pretty much how I did my miniatures. If you've liked the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more, you can always subscribe. But as always, if you leave a comment, I do reply to every single comment on my channel. And like I always say, enjoy your painting. This isn't a how-to, this is a how I painted my miniatures. But until next time, it's going to be goodbye from me, Welsh Miniature Boy.